Hello, my name is Ricky. Welcome to Liffey Valley's You Can Do It, How To DVD and How to Hang a New Door in an Old Frame. This DVD, and indeed others in our series, is intended to make DIY a much more pleasurable and enjoyable experience for you guys at home. Okay folks, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through the individual tools that we're going to need to complete the job. The first thing we're going to need is a chisel. And what we're going to use this for is actually mortise for the hinges in the door. Secondly, we're going to need a tape measure, and what we'll use this particular tool for is to transfer the hinge locations from the door frame onto the door. Thirdly, we'll need a hammer, and this will help us actually chisel out the actual hinge recesses in the door for the actual hinges. The next tool we're going to need is an adjustable square, and where we'll use this is we'll actually use this to make sure that we actually cut a consistent bevel along the entire length of the door. Next up is a screw one. What we'll use this for is to actually screw the actual hinges onto the door and turn the frame. We will also need a set of hinges. On this particular door, because it's a lightweight hollow core door, we're only going to use 75mm butt hinges, and we're only going to use two. If you are hanging a solid core door, you will need 3 4-inch butt hinges. Obviously, we will need some screws, and for this particular job, we're going to use some 4x30mm screws. We will also be using a power plane. This will enable us to plane the door to size and cut that consistent bevel which I previously spoke about. And in terms of health and safety, it's always very important that you use your ear protection and your eye protection. Now guys, the very first step in the process is just to make sure that the new door we purchased is the right size to fit the opening. Ideally, we want the size of the door to be 3/16 of an inch less than the width of the actual opening. So if I just measure my new door here, I see that it's a 30-inch door. That means from the internal edge of this leg of the door frame to the internal edge of this leg of this door frame, I want it to be 30 inches and 3/16. I'll just check that now. So on a central location, I have exactly 30 inches and 3/16. I'll now check it on the bottom. And again, I have 30 inches and 3/16. And finally, I'll just check it up top. And indeed, I have 30 inches and 3/16. So now we know that that door is going to fit accurately inside that frame. The reason we need it to be slightly over the frame, slightly oversized, is to facilitate the fact that we're going to have a gap between the door frame and the actual door on the hinge side, and indeed, the gap between the door edge and the door frame on the closing side of the door. Now folks, the next step, and this is a very, very important one, make sure we actually do this correctly and we don't get egg on our chin and we don't fit the lock, is this. Every single door is going to have what's known as a lock rail. Well, every hollow core door like this will have a particular piece of timber run down its entire length on the actual door style on one side only. And this will allow us to actually fit the lock later on in the process. So bear in mind, only one side has this. So if we hang the door the wrong way around, let's say we put the side with the actual lock rail on it on the hinge side, that would mean then the other side of the door would have no lock rail in it and we wouldn't be able to fit the actual door lock. So the best way to actually make sure that we actually locate the style with the lock rail in it is to simply turn the door like so and look at the top. It will tell us which side has the actual lock rail in it. So that's going to be the side that closes. And this is going to be the hinge side, so I put a H on it, and I know that's the side then I need to mortise the hinges on. Okay. The next thing I want to explain is the manner in which you may have to actually process the door. There's two ways you can actually hang a door, okay? The first method involves leaving both edges of the door completely square. Now that's okay to do if you have a scenario whereby your frame is, let's say, 1/4 of an inch or more wider than the actual external width, overall width of your door. In that case, it's fine to actually leave the sides of the door square. Just hinge on the actual side that's the hanging style and actually go and hang the door. However, if, like in our scenario here, you only have an opening that is 3/16 of an inch bigger than the external dimensions of the door, you must do a process that is known as beveling the door. Okay? What this means is, I have got to make sure that I reduce the width of the door across this face here, because that's the face that's actually going to fit inside the actual frame. So from here to here, I'm going to reduce the width of that door. I'm not going to reduce it in any way, shape or form from here to here. Now the best way to indicate which way you're going to actually cut that angled bevel is like this. Actually make some slash marks, like so. Now obviously that's over exaggerated, but it's just a visual reference so you know which way you need to bevel that door when we move away from the frame and we go over to the workstation. And likewise, I will do it here as well. Just like so. Just to reiterate, now when I go back over to the actual workstation, I will know which way I have to bevel the door. So again, I'm reducing the width of the door from on this face here. And I will know, when I spin it around, that is my hinge side, and this is the lock side. Okay? Now, the reason for beveling the door is quite simple. Okay? Like I said earlier on, if the frame is only 3/16 of an inch bigger than the door, or maybe in some cases it might be a little bit less, if we leave the door actually square, as it swings on the hinges, it describes an arc. And as it does so, what will happen potentially is this. As the door starts to close, the closing edge of the door will bind on the frame. Another thing that can happen is, even if it does, by chance, actually clear the actual frame at the leading edge of the actual door frame, what can sometimes happen is, if that frame is slightly out of twist, okay, it will bind on it as it goes in and becomes fully shut. However, if we plane that back bevel into it, it can compensate for that little curvature in the door frame and it will bypass that. So it makes it much easier to fit the door frame in less than perfect conditions. Likewise, if we bevel the hinge side of the door, what can happen as well is that will actually facilitate any misalignment in the hinges when we set them into the mortises. And again, if that frame is a little bit askew, it will compensate for that. Again, facilitating a much easier fit of the door in the frame. Okay, now that we've established the direction of the bevels, and we now know which side of the door has the locker in it, we can now carry the door to the workstation. Place it down gently in the door book. And this door book here, guys, is simply a little jig that we can make up on site, which enables us to keep the door in a stationary position for planing and hinging. And as you can see, it's just a section cut out of the block with a wedge fitted in to keep the door stationary. Okay, so when we actually position the door in the door book, it's very important that we make sure we keep the side of the door that has the letters on indicating the lock style and the hanging style facing your bevel. That way you cannot plane the bevels in the wrong direction. Okay? So now what I'm going to do is, I'm going to take the power plane, I'm going to plug it in, and I'm going to start the setup for planing that bevel. Okay folks, when I'm planing the bevel, what I want to be doing is, just like I explained earlier on, I want to reduce the width of the door along this face here. Okay? And like I said earlier on, now that I have a visual reference, I now know I'm going in the correct way. Because believe me, many a door has been beveled on the wrong side. You can guess how I know that. Okay. So when I make this bevel, okay, I want to reduce the angle across here, going from square, I want to offset it about 1/8 of an inch. 3 mil, okay? Now, what I can do to facilitate making sure I cut that consistent bevel along the actual length of the door is I can use an adjustable square. So as you can see, this ruler here slides up and down inside the little arm here. And what I can do is I can just set that to about 3 mil. Okay, so I've set the 3 mil on the adjustable square here. And what I'm going to do in order to transfer a consistent line, reference line along the length of the door, I simply register the square on the door and I just transfer that distance down with my pencil along the entire length of the door. Take your time, nice and steady does it. I want this to be as accurate and consistent as we can possibly get it. I just transfer that mark there up to the very outer corner here, that will establish the angle at which I need to plane the door. So there you go, guys. You can see it goes from about 3 mil back up to nothing. And I'll do the same down this end here. That's it. So, very simple process to establish a critical reference line. And now the aim of the game is for me to bevel that door to that line as consistently as I possibly can. Now, this process takes a little bit of time to master. Okay? So, don't be too harsh on yourself if for the first couple of times you don't actually get it there accurate. What I would suggest you do is practice on an off-cut of timber repeatedly until you feel really comfortable with it. Okay? So, best practice tip is this. Never take off too much of the actual door in one pass, okay? The harder you make the door, the actual plane work in planing the door, the cut won't be as smooth as it can possibly be, okay? So just take off little bits as you go. So the end of the game here is to try and hold the actual plane at a consistent angle down the full length of the door. And hopefully what will happen is, as we take successive passes along the length of the door, we'll eventually get it down to that angle that we've established using the square. Okay, so the process goes like so. Always make sure that you keep both hands on the actual plane whilst in operation. And we will notice, when I get to the end of the door, what I will make sure I do, just as I come to the last, say, 10 mil of the door, I will start to take the plane off in an upwards action. That will prevent me actually blowing out the end of the door, essentially taking a big gouge out the end of the door, which we don't want to do. Okay? Do that process now. Always try and keep the lead just behind your arm, guys, okay? And in fact, before I do that, what I'll actually just do is, I'll just throw on safety equipment that we need. Be comfortable with all of this stuff is, guys. Believe me, you should really, really wear it. Achieving that bevel. So far, so good. At this stage, guys, what I want to be doing now is just giving the actual door a full length run of the plane, lying flat on the actual bevel that I have created, okay? I'll just take a little bit less off this time than the previous time.